What's up, you creepy fucks, and welcome to the Let's Talk Horror channel, and welcome to the first ever. Welcome to the Creepzone. I almost forgot what it was called already then. But welcome to the Creepzone, everyone. As I say, this is the first ever episode. And welcome, Jordana. Jordana, my friend from the Pretty Killer podcast. Hello, how are you?
Hello, BP. I am fantastic. Happy Friday. Glad we're hanging out.
Happy Friday. Yeah, that's it. We're on a Friday. We're hanging out.
Yes.
And thank you for being the first ever guest on Welcome to the Creepzone.
I am honestly, from the bottom of my heart, I'm so honored that you asked me to be your first guest. Nowhere else I'd rather be than here. So thank you for having me on.
That's nice.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, as I said, this is it. This is the new series. It's called Welcome to the Creepzone because that's what I've named the new room. That's my new room that I'm in, where I record everything. It's called the Creepzone.
Love it.
And that's what this series is. It's almost a companion to, if you've listened to it, the podcast where we go in depth talking about everything in horror, and that's essentially what this is. But this is unedited. Unfortunately, maybe I should edit it. I don't know.
No.
But this is unedited, unfiltered, not as structured potentially as the podcast. So this could be the first, and it may even be the last one we ever do. I could fuck it up so badly that we may never do another one. But the plan is, if I don't mess it up, and if people do watch this, then the plan is to do one every single month.
Yes.
Fingers crossed.
I think
will it happen?
I think we'll get continual from you because this is going to be great.
Good. There you go. Look, you're hyping me up. You're making me feel better already.
Good. You should.
There we go. Good. Well, anyway, so we decided, because we did an episode on the podcast, we talked all about The Void.
Yes.
A film that we absolutely bloody love. We champion, and we did it because we were trying to raise awareness for that movie.
Yep.
Such an amazing movie. And then we started talking about these two movies, and we were like, well, why not talk about them? So we're talking on this episode, the first ever episode of Welcome to the Creepzone, all about Creep 1 and Creep 2, which is quite fitting. I didn't even realise until now that it's got Creep in the title, and so literally, that's how fucking stupid I am, because I didn't even realise.
You're just so excited. It's not that you're stupid. It's you're so excited that it's the inaugural episode of Welcome to the Creepzone. Talking Creep.
Yeah. All about Creep. Mm-hmm. There we go. So we did it. I didn't even think about it. So there we go. The first one. So first of all, when did you first watch these movies? Was it when they came out, or was it just something you were like, oh shit, I've not seen this, or were they recommended?
It wasn't right when they came out, but it was like I was the type of person where I never really, before Instagram and like podcasts were like as big as they are, I would just go on a platform, Netflix, Tubi, what have you, Hulu, and just look for horror movies that I've never really heard of. So I found Creep, and I'm so fucking glad I did, because it's such a fantastic film. It's amazing.
Yeah, I absolutely love them, and they are in my favourite. I'll get into this because we've already discussed a little bit about it, but they are my favourite Triple H handheld horrors. Well, in my top 10. I'll get into a little bit about what that is a little bit later, but more commonly known as found footage, which I hate. Yes. So we'll talk about that a little bit as well. But yeah, I watched these when they came out, because when they came out pretty quickly, I think, on Netflix.
Yes.
And I could be wrong, but I'm probably not.
No, and you're right. Netflix all the way.
Good stuff. Mm-hmm. And I watched them, and I watched the first one, and but it blew me away, really, because it was a different idea. It was a different sort of concept, a way of telling a handheld horror. A different way of telling it, a different way of doing it. And that's the thing, because I think that they are some of the most difficult films to try and do right.
Absolutely.
And it's very difficult to find one that does it successfully, which is why trying to have a top 10 actually isn't that difficult, because a lot of them are really shit.
Found footage is such an easy genre because it's so easy to make them. Now you can make them, but you have to have ones that really just check every mark off the list. And I feel like you definitely got it with this movie. Well, with both movies.
Yeah, exactly. I always say one thing that I've always said, that anyone can make a horror movie. Horror movies are the easiest movies to make.
Yep.
All you need is some like ketchup and a fake knife, and that's it. You're done. Make a horror movie
Yeah.
and just run around in the woods for half hour. But to make a good one, that's the trick. That's the
Absolutely.
difficulty. And when they do, they're the ones that always stick out to you, the ones that you always remember. And Creep 2 are definitely those movies,
Mm-hmm.
because they do something a little bit different, and then you're really interested in it and you're along for the journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we Creep 1. It was released in 2014. It's directed by Patrick Bryce, um, who is also obviously in the film as Aaron.
Yep.
And it's also starring Mark Duplass as Joseph, who, I'm sure we will talk about, but he's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that they wrote it as well together. I'm pretty sure they did the screenplay for both movies together as well.
Yep.
Which I really like, because it means that they truly understand the movie, the vision, and the characters.
You can feel it in their dynamic. Like when you watch the movie, you truly feel like you're watching complete strangers, and then their chemistry, whether it be like the off chemistry that happens, and then like the
Yeah.
somewhat connecting moments, you can feel it. And I think they're just such a great duo. Like I love both of them.
Yeah, they work really well together, and then it's interesting to see the changes that I feel like tonally, and for the decisions made in the second one. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that's when it actually had an advantage to it, when you could tell that Patrick Bryce was just directing, didn't have to worry about being in it. And I
Mm-hmm.
think there was a shift in it, and obviously we'll get into that as well. So this sits at 6.3 on IMDb, and on Rotten Tomatoes it's 91%. So
Wow.
yeah, so it's got a high one, but wait till we get to Creep 2, because that will blow your mind.
Right.
So synopsis wise, Aaron answers an online ad and drives to stranger's house to film him for the day. The man wants to make a movie for his unborn child, but his requests become more bizarre as the day goes along. That's pretty much the movie in a way.
Yeah, and it's a perfect way to describe it, because it seems so simple, but as like you said, it progresses. There's these like little odd shifts, and it's somewhat believable, because you're like, and I love how it plays on vulnerability, because it's like meeting
Yeah,
someone and how quickly you are to trust what they are telling you, what they're feeding you. And it's scary to have that perception when you're watching it. And then afterwards you're like, holy shit, like this, you know what I mean? Like a small interaction could turn into something like this. So it,
yeah. I mean, the thing with these movies, and that's why I think handheld horrors, that's why they work so well, because predominantly the best ones are situations where you're like, this could happen,
yeah.
this could be real.
Mm-hmm.
And when you put yourself psychologically in that mindset when you're watching it, and you're fully invested in the story and the characters, and you're drawn into this environment and the people, then you sort of, your brain gets stuck in it, and then
Yeah.
that's what makes it, scary. A bit, once again referencing the Blair Witch, to me, one of the first, and is it the one that still did it best, because the fear, the tension, the
Mm-hmm.
dread that you get from watching that movie is still insane to me to this day. But in this movie, it's a different type of fear, it's a different type of dread. But once again, I mean, it could happen. It could happen to anyone.
Yeah, I mean, like look at us
Uh,
as podcasters. We talk to people, and it's not like obviously in real life, but like we're trusting people. You know what I mean? Like you start
yeah,
conversing with people, and you somewhat like allow them into your life in a sense, and it's so it's weird to think about things. Not to be like
yeah.
morbid and like ruin like
No,
the good vibes, but it's just I don't know. It's weird.
yeah, but it's the realism, isn't it? And
Mm-hmm.
it's how it affects you, and when you're watching these movies, and that's when you know that they've done a really good job. But yeah, so the character wise in this, there's not many. So you have Aaron. So Aaron is the guy at the start of the movie. He's replying or to an ad essentially. He's turning up into a place that sort of feels like it's sort of in the middle of nowhere in a way, or it's very secluded.
Mm-hmm.
Meeting up with this guy called Joseph, and Joseph already comes across as a really, really nice guy.
Yes.
Yes, I already feel that there's something a little bit off with him, but at the same time, you don't know why. But then he starts going into more of a story about the fact that he has cancer or something, and yeah, he's basically making this video for his child because he believes that he's never gonna, grow up
Yeah.
with him. He's gonna die from it. He's terminal, and when you watch this film for the first time, you don't really know what's happening. When
Mm-hmm.
you watch this film, like I have, and I'm sure you have as well, multiple times, it actually gets more and more tougher to watch him as a character because he is a professional liar.
Yes.
Like he's a psychopath,
Yeah.
but he is so good at lying. Now, obviously, I'm not talking about the performance in regards to the actor doing it. I'm just talking about the character. And
Yeah.
obviously, Mark Duplass does an amazing job playing Joseph anyway, like absolutely phenomenal.
Love
But
it.
as a character, like when he's going through this whole spiel and stuff, and you're like, one, how can you not believe him?
Exactly.
And two, how many times has he done this to be so convincing of how good he is at lying about this whole situation, and how everything is like it has a structure. Everything is like in his head. He's just like, well, I've done this so many times now. I know exactly what to say, what to do, where this is going to go.
And it's so easy for him to
So,
do it.
yeah, and it happens throughout the film where at any point where Aaron's like, I'm not too sure about this. I don't think this is a place where I want to go. I
Mm-hmm.
think we should stop this. Then Joseph just sort of draws him back in with more lies.
Yes. And he's so convincing, and he's so, like, I hate to say it, but like welcoming. Like
Yeah,
you don't see him like get angry and frustrated when Aaron's trying to leave the situations. You see him just be like, "Hey," in a calming voice, like, let's," and you see it, and you're like, "Man, like he's good."
yeah. I mean, for the viewer, for us watching it, like there's at least a zillion red flags.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but and that's obviously one of the frustrating things with horror films, but also one of the things that makes horrors work so well
Mm-hmm.
is the stupidity of people. And but I feel like with this film, it works a little bit more because of how convincing of a liar Joseph is. And obviously, when you first watch this film, you're like, you don't know that he is this pathological, convincing professional liar. And
Yeah.
you don't necessarily know that he's this mental serial killer that's killed 39 people. Um, and then, and then I said, so the more you watch this movie, the more you are so almost in awe of how incredible Mark Duplass is playing this character.
He's perfect.
How incredible the writing for the character is, but also the fact that if this person, if they were a real person,
Yeah.
it's just terrifying. It makes you think of people like, because it makes you then think of people like Ted Bundy, for example, and
Mm-hmm.
how convincing Ted Bundy must have been as a professional liar, as a professional piece of shit.
And good looking too,
You
because
know,
Mark Duplass is really a good looking male.
yes, well, especially in the second one, he goes full on hunk in the second one.
I could not believe it. I was like, "Is that real?"
Yeah, well, we're getting to that, some salami or whatever. But yeah, so it basically it moves along the journey where Aaron is essentially spending the whole film filming Joseph, going along and then telling more lies and so on. Then obviously it does come out that he is a serial killer and so on like that. So, but what happens in this film? It does this switch a little bit through it, and that's where the film, as much as I still like it, and I think
Mhm.
it's a really interesting direction they go, I feel this is where it falls into typical horror flaws, and that's one of my problems with this movie, and it's not even a problem because I hate it when I absolutely love a movie and then say there's problems, because
Right.
then people think you're like saying that it's not that good, and that's like the absolute opposite. This film is phenomenal.
Yeah.
But what happens is at some point, oh, actually, before that, actually, there's a point where Aaron, you actually then end up thinking that he could be the serial killer
Yes.
because he ends up drugging Joseph. And then that comes out the blue when you first watch it. You're like, oh shit, I thought I was watching the whole film where this guy that's seemingly nice is going to be the person that's, because obviously they set it up, you know, with the points where he asks him to come back for a drink. And you think, oh, okay, look, I know something's going to go wrong here, because Joseph does a really clever bit in that moment where he says for him to come up and have a drink and then obviously leave afterwards.
Yeah.
But then he says a line when he's trying to convince Aaron to stay, saying, look, well, you've had a drink now, so you'll be over the limit. You can't drive. And you're like, well, you've done that shit before, you know?
Exactly. But I'm glad that you brought that up, because the first time I watched it, I did think that it was Aaron. I'm like, when he was being like super suspicious in the background, I'm like, so this whole time I'm programmed to think that Joseph's the killer and it's Aaron. And then when you see it, it's so well done. It's that.
Yeah, it's so well, because it's just sort of almost comes out of nowhere, where this whole time you're like, there's something wrong with this guy. And the person that you think is normal, suddenly then he's drugging him. And then you're like, oh, okay, well, this is taking a turn.
Yeah.
But then it takes the opposite turn, because then it switches back to what you originally thought anyway.
Well, we should have known when Peach Fuzz came out. I mean, that whole
yeah, absolutely, yeah. Obviously, we went. I forgot about that. Yeah, this Peach Fuzz mask, which I still don't understand. So, is there a reason behind the whole Peach Fuzz thing? I don't know if there is, or
so the way that I took it was, I think that he used that like in his way of the situation, but I think it helped with like the storyline of his wife when he was saying like when he confessed
yeah, okay,
that his wife was in, because it makes you, the more that he's telling you these like deep dark secrets, you're thinking that he's confiding and he's a genuinely good person. Well, maybe not, let's not say a good person, but you think that they're trying to have like a human connection. And then I think it did work in his benefit at the end. So it's just so well done, because any killer can wear a mask, but I love how it's incorporated in the sense of he told the story about his dad and he sang the song, and then it comes out to like, oh, well, I lied to you, it's this.
Yeah. And I also feel like I noticed that almost every time, I could be completely wrong, but I feel like there's almost some weird sexual connection between Peach Fuzz as well, because like every time he puts on that mask, he's doing some weird grinding, and he's going full like Christina Aguilera. Like in the car wash music video or something, and he's making some proper grunts and weird things like that. And I feel like there's something like a little bit sexual about it, but then also we know like serial killers are bloody weird anyway, so they have all that sort of stuff.
Exactly, but I'm glad that you brought that up, because when he does this like grunting noise, I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah, especially when there's like the bit where he's sort of at the door stopping him from going out, and he's doing some weird pelvic thrusting, and you're like, yeah, this is weird. Yeah, and I love that bit in the movie as well, where he's just like, that bit happens, and he's stopping at the door, and then Aaron's just like, are you going to let me go? And then he's wearing his mask, and he's like shaking his head like, no.
I know.
And then at that point, you're like, yo, this is fucking, because like, that's when it becomes sort of terrifying again, because you're okay, well, this guy's trapped.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then also there's a moment where I won't go into it too much, but he admits something to Aaron that was like a proper secret about some time, that basically he sexually assaulted his own wife.
Yes.
But then at the same time, because he's such a liar, you're also like, is he then making up this sick story?
Exactly.
That he thinks is normal. That it's like a normal thing to keep a secret. like you can't trust him, and that's the thing with this movie. With someone like Joseph, when they're in these movies, you can't trust a single thing they say. And what's more terrifying with someone like Joseph is that they think that holding a secret as dark as that it could be a complete lie is
Yes.
like the right thing to then to do.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense, that makes sense.
It does make sense, and it's funny you say that because you see him like just divulge all of this information onto Aaron. You know what I mean? Like he just meets this
Yeah,
guy and he's like saying all this stuff, and then it's like I don't know. It weighs on your mind because you're like thinking, okay, this person's being totally like cool and telling me stuff, but like for what reason? And then you start thinking to yourself, okay, something's not right in this equation because usually people don't do that type of stuff. You know what I mean? Like you just
yeah,
there's so many mind games in this movie that's done in like what an hour and a half. It's done so well, but you think about like what you just said, you think about that type of stuff and you're like, what the fuck?
yeah. There's so many. Where the more this is one of those films, the more and more you watch this movie, and obviously the second one, the more and more you think about it. But a lot of it for me is on the character's perspective of Joseph,
Mm-hmm.
and it just goes to show how cleverly written and performed he is by you know by the people that made it and that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, there's a point in it where it takes a turn and it goes a little bit to typical horror, where after that bit where he's going for Christina Aguilera or whatever her name is, um, it cuts and then Aaron is basically back at home and he's escaped and he's then at home, but then he starts getting things sent to him,
Mm-hmm.
like videos and cuddly toys of a wolf from Aaron.
Yep.
From Joseph, sorry. Aaron gets them from Joseph. And why the fuck did Aaron not go to the police before any of this?
Like right after he left, right?
Yeah, like this is my like because I thought at some point what's going to happen is that the police are going to turn up and then Joseph will end up legging it and then that's what's happened.
Mm-hmm.
But then this is where I started finding like the flaws in the writing and stuff or the where it was going because you're like he left and then the next thing you see is Aaron at home going like, oh, this is, after then, this time has passed and now I'm getting this. And you're like, for one, why the fuck didn't you go to the police and so on?
Right. I mean,
And
I
then
would.
you're getting these, yeah, absolutely. And then you're getting these new, these new videos and, packages from him. And you're like, okay, so if you take this to the police, then obviously legally and police wise, because it's their job, they would have to look into it.
Right.
But he doesn't and sort of hasn't. And I really don't understand that part of it, because Aaron hasn't done anything wrong. Apart from drugs, but then you can just deny that, if anything, anyway, because you're dealing with somebody that's like a serial killer. Like, that bit was one of those typical things where I'm like, oh, okay, so they knew what they wanted to do with the movie at the start and the middle,
Mm-hmm.
but they knew how to end it. But there was a little bit within it where they were like, I'm not too sure what to do, so let's do it like this.
Right.
And then you start getting plot holes and stuff.
But the biggest plot hole too, and you just said it, and like let's think about it. He has hard evidence. He has exactly, the videotapes of him like pulling out the mask, taking him out into the woods, scaring him. Because I mean, as much as this movie isn't really like full of jump scares, there are quite a bit of times where you're like, oh, because he like screams and it catches you off guard. And then
like one of Joseph's things, which is obviously more apparent in the second one, is like jumping out and making people scared.
Yeah, and it's funny.
And it's funny, yeah, and it because I mean, unless you're like me who has zero emotion and doesn't feel anything, I don't jump. But you know that they would be very effective scares and jump scares that are just like put in there because it's funny.
Yeah, and it works so well. But like, I don't know, I thought the same thing too. Like you were saying about going to the cops, because if you were in that situation A and you escaped B, which you should be grateful for, you have C, you have hard evidence. I'd be going right to the cops saying, I need someone patrolling my house, something, because this crazy dude.
Yeah.
So I get that. I see that.
Yeah. So that was when the film, I was like, okay, well, look, I'm still really interested in it because this is still different. Like, this is still different to the normal shit you get.
Yeah.
It's just the fact that it took like a turn where you're like, oh, okay, well now there's some problems. But not problems that make you go, well, this is fucking stupid and I want to turn it off, because you
Right.
don't. You still want to know how it ends. Um, and it basically, Aaron gets stupider and stupider and becomes more of a fucking idiot,
Mm-hmm.
and ends up going back out to meet Joseph, because he's a fucking idiot.
Like
And
as if like the first encounter wasn't enough. Let's just go back and like meet this fucking crazy guy again. Like that makes a ton
yeah,
of sense.
and I think like a lot of it is like, they're leaning on how nice Aaron is and so on, and how like he obviously, there's part of him that wants to help Joseph and so on.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also that line of our absolute stupidity where you're like, normal people don't do this, or if they do, then then they're fucking mental.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a bit weird. But yeah, he goes back, sits on the bench, and then Joseph just puts an axe in his head, and then it cuts away to Joseph watching it on the video, which is a nice little ending.
I loved it.
And then he puts it away with his millions of other tapes where he's killed. I think he says in the movie 39 people or something, but you never know, because it could be a lie.
Could be. It could be triple.
Actually, I think he says in the second one, he says it's 39. I think.
Oh,
but yeah.
But like it's,
I don't fucking know.
I loved that ending because I thought, because I was thinking as I was watching it the first time, how is this going to go? Like, how are they going to meet again? Because he clearly knows that Joseph is, I mean, quote unquote, Joseph is off the rails. I loved the play on, again, vulnerability and people being nice. Just because, you know what, I'm a nice person and I give people the benefit of the doubt. But being a horror enthusiast, I know boundaries, and I know that
we know the red flags. We exactly. People say horror is bad for you. Well, it's not, because we learn all the red flags for when someone's a creep or not.
Exactly. So like, but again, like you said, like his plea to Aaron was so genuine, and that's another thing I wanted to touch on was Mark Duplass. You find yourself really, I found myself enjoying Joseph. I know that he's the bad guy, but I love him as a character. And I think that he's just like, if you minus the crazy killing part, he'd be a good person. He'd be cool. You know what I mean? Like he's
like he'd be like he'd be like a friend for life.
Yeah.
Like that's the type of thing. That's the type of person he comes across as. It's like a friend for life. But yeah, obviously the fact that he's a serial killer, then that doesn't work out very well. But if he wasn't, you're right, he'd be a really good mate.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so this film, the first one is obviously fantastic. It's so good, but it's mostly led by an original sort of idea that works really well. Yes, it has its problems, but what film doesn't?
Right, exactly.
And then, Mark Duplass as Joseph, his performance is absolutely fantastic. And he just, everything he does, it felt like it was purposeful.
Yeah.
And it felt like he fully embodied that character.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, I think writing it with Patrick Brice as well together and being in it and stuff, I think that's when it works really well, when you're doing these small independent movies.
Yeah.
And you work and every day you're living in that world, then you get to really craft it properly.
Absolutely. And I think the play on realism, like that this is a situation that could happen, I think that definitely gives it that advantage. And I think that Joseph / Aaron is one of the most underrated slashers, because we look at, I know that there's the category of slashers and we have like the heavy hitters, Freddy, Michael, Art, but I think that he's such a good slasher. And I think that like when we discuss in a whole, I think that like we don't talk about him, and he needs to be talked about because he's so methodical and he's so like out of his goddamn mind, and he's a real person. So that should make it even more scary.
Yeah, well, they've done a really good job at understanding who or what a serial killer thinks that they are.
Yes.
And that's what they do a really good job in this movie. We all, like, serial killers are arrogant. They don't understand. They don't have an emotion that makes them think that what they're doing is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And it just doesn't work for them in their brain. And I feel like that is Joseph in this movie, where it's just like, he doesn't think that what he's doing is wrong.
Yeah,
It's just part of his DNA, and that's just the way his brain is wired. And they do a really good job of capturing that in the movie.
absolutely.
So, um, like I do in the podcast on this series as well, I'm going to be doing some facts. So on Creep 1 and Creep 2, I'm going to do 3 facts because I love, who doesn't bloody love a fact?
Exactly. Love them.
So number one, since the movie was based on a series of conversations between Patrick Bryce and Mark Duplass, most of it was improvised, which does come across quite a bit in the film, but also then it goes to show how good they were. This led to a lot of scenes being shot. There is also footage of at least 3 other alternative endings.
Oh my God.
Which would be interesting to see. And I haven't seen any, but it'd be interesting to see them.
I haven't either, but they need to release that. When we get Creep 3, they should add.
Well, we'll see about that, eh?
I hope so. I'm trying to manifest it. I'm trying to project it into the universe.
Yeah. Number 2, Joseph's cover name is revealed to be Bill at the end of the movie. Joseph could also be another fake name he uses, which is, because that's what he's going to do. He's just going to keep using fake names.
Yeah.
Number 3, the peach fuzz mask used is from Forum Novelties 59449 Nightwolf mask. So if anybody wants to buy it, I'm sure if you look up that Forum Novelties 59449 Nightwolf mask, you'll probably find it on Google or eBay or something like that.
It's a good mask. I love it.
Yeah, it works. So that's Creep 1. Creep 2 is a different story, a different idea. But yet, once again, like, even though it feels very familiar, it's still a very original and unique idea as to where you can take a serial killer. So Creep 2, it was released in 2017. It's directed once again by Patrick Bryce and starring Mark Duplass as Joseph and Desiree Arkhaven, which is probably completely wrong, or Ackhaven, one of them, as Sarah. Good thing about these movies is that I don't have to go through a lot of cast because there's hardly any people in it.
Exactly. And I love Sarah. I think she is fantastic in the movie.
She's a badass, isn't she? She's a proper, like a final girl.
Yes, this mini franchise has an underrated slasher and an underrated final girl because she is
final girl.
Chef's kiss. I love her.
Yeah. So this film sits at 6.4% on IMDb. So a percent above the first one, but it sits currently on Rotten Tomatoes at 100%.
Is it really?
Yeah, I couldn't believe it because I've never seen a film on there. I mean, I don't go on Rotten Tomatoes, but obviously for this, doing the research, and when I saw that it got 100%, I was like, that's insane.
That's crazy, but that's so well deserved, and I love that Creep 2 sits with 100%. I love that.
Yeah, it's absolutely mental. So, in Creep 2, a video artist who craves shocking stories realizes she has made a mistake when she meets a serial killer in a cabin, which is obviously Joseph.
Yes.
So this film sort of starts the same way. And you're sort of like, oh, okay, well, is this just going to be another retelling of the same story? And you get that obviously a lot in sequels. And part of me sort of almost feels like they did it on purpose because they know that people already expect something from a sequel. So this one, Sarah, she is, I can't remember the name of it, but she does a YouTube series.
Extreme. Oh my God, what is it?
Makeover. No, something. It's something anyway. She does something basically where she's going around and she looks at ads and she's basically replying to or basically people that have got weird things or fetishes like being treated like a baby and or shit like that.
Yes.
And she sees an ad that from Joseph. And it's one of the funniest ads ever because, and also this is something that I'll go into as well, because I found like a little bit of basically the writer, the filmmaker brain in me found a little bit of where they could have done something. Anyway, I'll get into it. But yeah, so she sees an ad and Joseph's ad is basically saying about like doing this and doing that, the usual sort of stuff. Yep. But then it says, if you like interview with the vampire, that's a plus.
I love it.
And I literally laugh every time I see that because that feels like so Joseph.
Totally.
Like You know what I mean? Because you know that he's probably just typing that, and in his head he's just like, yeah, well, if they like that, that's an absolute plus, isn't it? Without thinking about how ridiculous that sounds.
Absolutely. But it's like it's a total
Um,
Joseph ad.
yeah, absolutely. So anyway, Sarah goes to Joseph's house, um, which is a nice fancy house.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, I assume that he's, killed somewhere there and taken the house. I don't know if he's getting the money to do it. I mean, I don't know how he makes his money.
Right.
And they don't really go into that, which would be quite interesting, I suppose, to find out how he does it or stuff like that, or if he's ever had a job or whether he just steals or whatever. I don't know.
Like an origins. I mean, in a sense, like an origin story. Like what created him to do this? Like what happened? And exactly like, because remember in one how he was asking Aaron if he needed money?
Yeah, and he was, yeah.
I know it's like a load of bullshit, but like you're kind of wondering like what do you how do you do this? Like, do you kill people and just take over their life?
Well, yeah, exactly. Like, how much of what he's saying is bullshit? Like, typical pathological liars, like, you can't trust them.
Mm-hmm.
And someone like Joseph, you can't trust. But, like, at what point, like, he tells this lie, but then does he have loads of money? Like, is he actually saying, do you need money? I can give you money because he actually has it.
Yeah.
Or is he just saying that to keep someone, you know what I mean? To keep someone there and talking shit.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so Sarah goes to him, but it's very early on that you realise that this is going to be a different type of movie.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I love about it, because Joseph very early on confesses everything to Sarah and basically says that I want you to film this, my essential swan song, to it all, because what I love, he's basically lost his mojo, his libido to murder.
Yeah.
And he's done it which is mental.
It's crazy.
He's done it for so long that he's just lost his love for it, which is mental. It's such a dark idea, but at the same time, it's such a unique idea that we're now following a serial killer that you really shouldn't root for. And that's when these films are done really well. Mm-hmm. That you shouldn't root for, that you should not like, but yet you're there on this journey going, I wonder how it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And is he going to get this lust for life by taking somebody else's again?
It's funny because
that's essentially what the film is.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like smitten by him because like I feel like progressively throughout these movies, you just like him more and more. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Even in the beginning when he's with that guy, like his friend, and you get to actually see like a murder happen, which was pretty brutal, and I loved that because I wanted to see like him in action.
Yeah. So the opening of the movie, I should have mentioned that, but the opening of the movie is really good because he's basically still doing the same old thing where he's sending packages and stuff to people's houses. And what I like about that start thing is that it sort of almost jumps into it going, well, you remember Creep 1, this is where it carries on the same way. Mm-hmm. Like we're not going to change too much. If you've seen it, then get ready, and this is where the journey is going to take you next in this one.
Yeah. And
so he ends up, as you say, violently ending up killing this person who he's befriended, and in typical Joseph ways. But then it moves into the whole Sarah storyline, where now Joseph has long hair in a ponytail. He's got a beard. He's slimmed up. He gets his willy out.
Yeah. That part. Oh my God.
Yeah. He basically there's a bit where he's standing in front of Sarah and basically says like, people feel more comfortable or something with each other if they get completely naked.
Yeah.
Which is also it's such an uncomfortable moment for the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But also it's hilarious because it's the way that Joseph is standing that is so funny that I can't stop laughing. That every time I watch it, it's just like the way that he is he's standing, but also you can tell that he feels uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. And he's the one that prompted
it. Yeah, and it's almost like very contradictory to what he's saying, because the way he's almost standing like as if he's like getting ready for somebody to paint him.
Yes, totally. I love it.
But it's hilarious. So if you want to see Mark Duplass's penis, just watch Creep 2.
Yeah,
simple as that.
Because you see it for a while. I mean, he stands there naked for quite a bit.
for a little bit.
Yes.
But yeah, so Sarah does end up sort of getting naked as well. But luckily, I'm really happy that the way that they filmed that bit, because it's one of those things where you're like, oh well, they don't need to add this in, but then they did, and they did it because they didn't show anything of Sarah. It was
Yep.
just her face. Um,
Yep.
so I really like that. But yeah, and that's where basically where the story goes. But what's interesting is that the start of it, it's all about Joseph obviously losing what he has for the love of murdering people and stuff, and it's about him trying to get it back, and then also trying to document his life and his journey through it. But what is also interesting is that you still don't get any of that. Like, you still don't really get any of his backstory, really.
Mm-mm.
You don't get any idea of how this all happened. But you get a lot of him being really pissed off. You get a lot of him being really depressed. And you get a lot of where you're sitting there watching someone where you're like, oh, I feel a little bit bad for him. And then you snap out of it going, well, I shouldn't feel bad for him because he's murdering people.
Because he's a killer. But like, I love it too, because he meets his match with Sarah. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and their chemistry, I love, because I feel, I mean, the way that I take it, because I could be completely wrong, but I feel like their chemistry, and like he actually like does kind of like,
yeah, he definitely does, because I feel like she mothers him.
Yes, and like,
and you know, a common function or a common misfunction and stuff that serial killers have is obviously from their youth, from their parents, from their mother, and stuff like that.
mm-hmm.
So they work that angle sort of in there as well. And she's you know, like, yeah, she's a tough woman. She's, you know, and also I think they do it really cleverly where she also knows the situation that she's in.
Mm-hmm.
And she doesn't know whether it's real
Yep.
or not.
Yep.
And she's dealing with it, I think, the way that she knows best how to, until she can get out.
And play it,
but
like,
obviously, as we know,
play it cool and like, and then escape.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite parts is when Joseph's trying to like scare her and he keeps doing it.
Yeah.
And then when
the
second time when he's at the door and he does it and he's like, really? And then he looks back, he's like,
yeah,
where are you from? And she's just, and it's
yeah,
like,
I love that bit.
I love that part.
That's one of my, if not my favorite bit of the movie, because he tries making a jump once. And he was like, you're a tough egg or something like that.
Yes.
And then straight afterwards, like 5 seconds later, he does it again. And it's the way he does it, because he screams at her face.
He like takes off running like a little kid and he's just like gone. Then he does it.
And that's it. And then, screams right in her face or in the camera. And then she doesn't flinch. And he's just, and you can tell he's like, he's pissed off about it.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, because there's obviously most of the time he's pretty calm, although obviously in the second one he's not as calm, because he's trying to, you know, he's upset because he's lost his, you know, his power to want to go and do nasty things.
Yeah.
But in that bit, like, you can see the anger on his face a little bit, because you're like, he's like, why is this not working? She should be terrified.
I love it.
She's not. She's like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, complete silence, and then he's just like, where are you from? And it's like, you met your match, buddy. Like, try to break this egg.
So they basically end up building up a really nice relationship within the movie. Yep. It looks like it's something that Joseph really wants and needs, and she's just there because. And I think you're right. I think there's a point where, because I don't know whether she's still like, I don't know if he's just mentally ill and needs help, and she still doesn't believe that he's a serial killer, because obviously right at the start, like he mentions, that he's killed 39 people. Yeah, and you know, and you're like, okay, well, is this person like just absolute fucking mental and hasn't done that? Yeah, and so I think that they build up an actual true relationship. Throughout the movie, that you actually like, oh, this is sweet, isn't it? But then at the same time, once again, you snap out of it and you go, no, this is fucked up.
And you're like waiting for like, when is he going to turn? Is she going to kill him? Because I did find myself throughout the movie a lot being like, this is so sweet that they're connecting, and like, is it bullshit what he's telling her? Is he being like truly fucking sincere with someone for once? Because, you know what I mean? Like, maybe he's thinking, I don't know. It just, this has so many layers to it where, is he a complete sociopath and he's lying about everything? He's telling her all this bullshit. Is it real and he's confiding in her? Like, it's so hard to decipher, but I think that's what I love so much about it.
Yeah, and I think like he's got his guard so far down because of him not being able to do what he does, or if he does it, he doesn't get any enjoyment from it anymore.
Right.
And he's enjoying something different, which is having a relationship with another person.
Yeah, and not killing them.
But yeah, by not killing them. And then and I loved about the thing that when she gets her own back because she actually scares the shit out of him
with the tape all on her face.
Yeah, and she's got tape all over her face, and it looks really weird. But yeah, she scares the absolute shit out of him, and he screams. And yeah, that bit's hilarious.
I love that part.
But yeah, so the film basically essentially goes along this path of them building up this sort of really sort of nice relationship where Joseph becomes more comfortable around her.
Mm-hmm.
She becomes more comfortable around Joseph. But then ultimately, we sort of know how this is all going to end in a way. Well, you don't, but you do.
You hope it doesn't.
And in between, there's loads of... Yeah, you hope that it doesn't. And in between all this, you get loads of really, really cool scenes. This film, I would say, is definitely funnier than the first one.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of really standout funny scenes. Like there's the scene where it's not going well for Joseph because he's taking her up on this hike thing so they can go to this place where the water's normally rapid, and he was going to stand in the water and start telling his story. But basically the tide's out, or there's no water, or whatever it is, and there's a bit where he's standing in the water, sitting in the water doing this. And she's like, "What are you doing with your arms?" And he's just like, "Oh, because of like the digital effects, you can put the water up there." And she's like, "Just no, don't do that."
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, and then like there's loads of little things like when he's just like, "How's the ponytail?" And then she goes and does it, and then she takes it all out, and he's just like, "Oh, I didn't want you to take it. No, it's fine. Just do it all again."
Yeah.
It's just so funny. He's Mark Duplass he's so good in the first one.
Yep.
But he takes it up a level in the second one where he is absolutely phenomenal at Joseph in the second one, because it's a different side to Joseph, but he plays it so well because there's this dark, this threatening, this dangerous side to him.
Yep.
But also there's like a sweetness to him that you haven't seen before. And then in the back of your mind also, you're like, is he still lying? There's a scene where he basically tells Sarah that he's never kissed a woman before.
Yes, and I'm like, is that true? Like, is this
and I don't think it is. I think that he's doing it because he wants to kiss her.
Very valid point, because I was thinking that too.
Yeah, purely because he likes to be able to make people do what he wants
and have control on the situation.
And by lying to them, by lying to someone, but so convincingly do it. And I think this is where he starts getting his mojo back, so to speak.
Yes.
Where he starts realizing that if he can crack this egg, and that's why I think that line at the start is important, where he's saying like, "You're a tough cookie to crumble," or whatever he says, or a tough egg to crack.
Yeah.
It's him trying to figure out how to break her down, how to get into her mind, and that's how he gets his mojo back. It's not necessarily about killing her or killing other people.
Yeah.
It's about how he does it so well.
Yes.
And can do it to anyone. And if he can do it to Sarah, then he can do it to anyone.
Yeah, because his story was so convincing about like he didn't get along with his parents, and then he had a psychiatric break, so he went into and like just the progression, like if you watch him, there's no hesitation. There's no, like when you're like not being truthful, or you're kind of like not wanting to say something, you kind of like get choked up on your words. He was so like thorough and fluid, and you're like, I don't know if he's bullshitting or if he's,
No, and it's one of those things where like I constantly feel like everything he says is a lie.
Yes.
Because then you go back to the first scene that he's essentially in the first movie, where he's already a professional liar, where he's already 100% nailed telling this guy a story about how he's dying and he needs to do this. So telling a little fib for him like that doesn't mean anything. And the fact that she ends up giving him a kiss, it almost feels like in his head, he's like, right, well, I've got it back.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Like I've broken her down to the point that I've convinced her that I am a nice person, so to speak. I'm not actually this serial killer.
Yep.
But then it ends up that he takes her out to the woods, and he's buried. He's made a grave for a minute, and he didn't know whether it was going to be for her or himself.
Yep.
But as he says in the movie, he knows now, or he's decided, and obviously it's for her.
Mm-hmm.
I love this scene because it feels like a proper horror movie. This scene,
yes, because you feel that
and I love how it's filmed as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like I love. There's a scene. There's a shot in it where it goes on for quite a while, where they're in this woods and it's pitch black, but there's just the light from the camera on Joseph, and all you can see is Joseph.
Yes,
and the look of that is like, that's like, for me, like chef's kiss of like how you make like a found footage movie. I've said it, found footage. Handheld horror.
Triple H.
How you make a Triple H movie look like amazing. Like you use that sort of style of filmmaking to tell a story or to show a scene, because there's nothing in that scene apart from just Joseph standing there in the light.
Yep.
But it's just what he's saying and the way he's doing it and his mannerisms and how good Mark Duplass is at that role. And then they move on, as I said, and go to the graves. And then he does end up stabbing her quite a lot of times, like nice, nastily, but in typical horror fashion.
Yeah.
Being stabbed multiple times doesn't matter.
And then he stabbed himself too.
And then he stabs himself because it's like almost a Romeo and Juliet thing.
And that's the part where I was like, what the fuck is going on? Because, like, is he being genuine? And then I thought maybe it was fake. Like, maybe he was doing, like, a fake knife. Because I'm like, there's no way that he's going to off himself after getting his mojo back.
Yeah. And then, but he does. He's absolutely bloody mental.
Mm-hmm.
And, and then, so Sarah gets away, and you'll presume that Joseph is dead.
Mm-hmm.
But then the film ends with a video camera, somebody filming someone, and Sarah is there in the distance, and then she gets on a train, and then the whistle theme that is commonly happens throughout Creep 1 and Creep 2, that is sort of like goes along in your head all the time after watching this movie. You can't get it out. It's like when you watch Candyman and you can't get the Candyman theme out your head.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, you're cooking at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, asking Alexa to play the Candyman theme, which is exactly what I do every night. Then he starts whistling the tune. And then the last shot is where Sarah does a quick glance over to someone who's whistling, and then she does like a face like, oh, fuck.
Yes.
And the film ends. So Joseph is presumably alive still. And then we live on in the hope that a Creep 3 will happen, but it won't happen. But we can only hope that it will happen.
I thought it was happening. Like, I thought that they said it was happening.
It's like up and down.
Damn.
Yeah, it's like 1 minute it's happening, next minute it's not. Then next minute they're like, it is happening. And then there was something to do with, like, they've written it. And then the next thing I heard, like, there was something like, basically there's a whole thing where, like, they've basically both said that they do not want to make a third one unless it feels like they should make a third one. They do not, because they're so proud of the first two.
And they should be.
And they're proud of and they should be.
Yeah.
Especially for a sequel, because I will flat out say I prefer the sequel to the first one. I think this is one of those films where, you've got what sequel is better than the first one. I would say Creep 2 is.
Undoubtedly. I watched it. Sam told me, because I watched Creep, and then I knew Creep 2 was out, and I was like, that sequel stigma. I'm like, it's probably not as good as the first one. And he's like, no, watch it. You'll love it. I watched it, and I'm not even kidding, BP. As soon as it got done, I watched it again. Because I was like, how perfect is that goddamn movie? And it just made me feel like all these like emotions, like the certain way. And I watched it right after again. I love it.
Yeah, because it's for me, it's like, it's expertly crafted, because sequels are so difficult to do, but it was an evolution on every aspect of storytelling and character and as a movie. Like, one, it looked better as a movie,
Yeah.
which is obviously difficult to even try and do with handheld movies.
Mm-hmm.
The Mark Duplass, yeah, he's great in the first one, but even better in this one.
Yeah.
You've got a more, even though yes, she makes the wrong choices, you feel like she's making the choices she does in the movies because she has to,
Yeah.
not because she's an idiot like Aaron in the first one.
Mm-hmm.
So I think as an evolution of every aspect, it's so good that it's a deserved sequel where you're like, okay, if anybody says, well, what's better than the first one? What film is better? Yeah, Creep 2 is better than the first one.
Yeah.
And that's difficult to say because obviously the first one is so good.
Yeah.
That you sort of feel like you're going, oh, well, this is, the first one's rubbish compared to it. No, that's not the case at all. It's just the fact that the first one is so good,
yeah,
but they perfectly crafted a sequel.
It's like I don't want to say the one time, because there are some really good horror movies that have the original and a sequel be really well together, but like it's the perfect combination. Like it's literally,
yeah.
And like you said too, that one shot in the woods, and the one that always sticks out in my mind one of my favorite shots in horror was when they're playing like hide and seek, and Aaron's like running up and it looks like a strobe light, and he's screaming, but it's like strobed and he's coming up to the camera. I don't know what it is about that scene, but I love it because it's so creepy, but he's acting like it's happy, and you're like, is he gonna attack her? It's just like the unknown, but it's so beautifully shot.
Yeah. And it just goes to show like the pure like writing talents, the acting talents, directing talents of Patrick Bryce and obviously Mark Duplass together, that it would be absolutely criminal if we didn't get a third one. So if at any point they watch this or hear about this, like basically me and Jordana are basically saying, just fucking make it. Just make it
already. Come on.
Because we have full faith that you can make it amazing. Simple as that. If you've made a sequel this good, we know that you can make a third one. Because it's always sad because you're like, this then could be a perfect trilogy.
Exactly. And that's what we need is a perfect trilogy.
Yeah, because it's not easy to do. And most of the time, horror, loses it after the second one, let alone the third one.
Yeah, off the rails, usually.
So, yeah, to be able to do 3 amazing movies, but then also it's one of those things where they're like, are they thinking, yeah, but we don't want to ruin it. And it's having that confidence in themselves to go, well, look, I think we know that we're going to make something good, so let's do it. And hopefully, fingers crossed, that they do, because Creep 1, Creep 2 are absolutely phenomenal movies that I absolutely love. But there was 2 things that I did notice. So the sort of writer, the screenwriter, the director in me, there was 2 things that I want to say, and it's within the same scene. So there's the scene where he's doing his like speech at the start, where he's going through like he's done this and that, and he's basically detailing everything.
Yeah.
And there's a bit where he says he goes, it's the best job in the world, and then he goes on a little bit, and then he goes, but then it's become like a bit too much like a job. And you're like, well, one, you've contradicted yourself. So is this just a flat out fucking lie?
Yes.
Because 1 minute it's like it's the perfect job, but next minute then it's become too much of a job. So you've contradicted yourself.
Yeah.
And the other thing that really sort of not frustrated me, but I was just like, this would have been so much better, is in the bit where he's got on the ad saying how much if you like Interview with the Vampire, then that's a plus. Now that's hilarious and I love it.
Yeah.
But he starts. There's a bit in it where he is quoting Francis Ford Coppola.
Yes.
But Francis Ford Coppola, however you pronounce it, but on common English, I don't know. He directed Bram Stoker's Dracula. So I feel that they should have put that in that scene at the start. So rather than saying you Interview the Vampire, they should have put Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Exactly.
Because that would have been a more fit, because that would have been almost like a callback to be like, oh, Joseph does know his stuff, because obviously he does mention as well that about acting as well, that he wanted to be an actor or something like that as well.
Yep.
And you're almost like, well, once again, you're like, well, that could just be a flat out lie. But then throughout the movies, and also the way that he's acting, like obviously because it's all a performance for him.
Yeah.
So you're like, part of you're like, okay, well maybe that's one truth.
I thought, now it's funny you say that. I thought that was in there on purpose because of him, like not like saying that he doesn't know, but like not connecting something like that, because he's quoting Francis Ford Coppola, but yet he's putting Interview with the Vampire. So I'm like, kind of like when they're at the diner and he said, oh, I have this great spot to show you because it has the best pancakes. And when they get there, he's looking at the menu and he's like, oh, I wonder what's good. And Aaron's like, I thought you said the pancakes were good.
Yeah.
So you like catch him like in these little circumstances.
Yeah.
So I was like, I wonder if they did that on purpose or if it was like you were
possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so, these films are so clever. Mm-hmm. And I love the fact that they're so unique and feel so original, especially the second one. I would say the second one feels so unique and so original. Yeah. I feel like the second one could have even been its own film. Like if the first one hadn't been made, the second one would still have worked.
Absolutely.
Because of the idea and the fact that you're watching a film about a serial killer, a nasty person, but the film is about him getting his confidence back to go and murder people.
Yeah, like
or enjoy it.
He lost his mojo, so he's like the serial killer version of Austin Powers. Like,
yeah, basically, yeah, basically, yeah. But yeah, so look, I mean, we can both. I mean, we've spoken about Creep 1 and 2 before. Obviously, we can recommend these movies enough.
Absolutely.
So if you have never watched these movies, then you need to. I'm sure you would have, because you're watching this. Well, you might be watching this. If you're not, then you're missing out.
A lot of things.
A lot of things. But yeah, you know, you've got to go and see Creep 1 and Creep 2. I'm pretty sure they're on Netflix everywhere.
Yep.
And they are fantastic handheld horrors.
I
was talking basically a little bit about this hashtag handheld horrors. Let's get that going. I was talking a little bit with Jordana about this. Basically, I have a difficult time with talking about saying things that are found footage, because a lot of the time they're not always found footage.
Exactly.
Like Blair Witch Project is a found footage. They found this footage. So I commonly call found footage movies that people call found footage handheld horrors.
I love
it, because not all of them are found. So that's it. So we're now got a petition going. We've got a hashtag of handheld horrors. I'm going to have to change one of my YouTube videos to my top 10 handheld horrors. And then, yeah, as I said, hopefully I don't get sued or beaten up by Triple H, the wrestler.
You need to have a celebrity death match, you and him.
He's at least 4 times the size of me. Just one of his arms is 4 times the size of me.
You never know. I'll root for the underdog. I root for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
You need to coin that.
Root for me.
You need to coin that phrase though, because you are onto something with
Triple H. Yes, handheld horror.
You are like that's
it. Just brilliant. To me, it just makes more sense because not everything is found footage.
No.
So if they find it, yeah, it is. If they don't, and it's just there, well, no, it's not.
Yeah, it's if you like sitting and thinking about it, because you see all these like found footage, and it's not a lot is not found. It's just shot in the sense of like creep, and then you do have your found. So it should be divided, and that's a perfect label. And I just love that you came up with that. It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Handheld horrors. There we go. Yes. Triple H.
It's a mouthful.
Don't sue me.
Handheld.
It is. Yeah, that's why we got to do it. Triple H.
Yeah.
Or H 3 times. I don't know what it works. Either way, that's what we do. Hashtag it.
Yep.
That's what I want. The horror community. Handheld horrors. That's what it's now known as.
The next time I post something that is a Triple H, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to tag you in it, and that's how it's going to be.
Absolutely, I want to see it.
Yep.
But that's it. So that's it. Thank you so much, Jordana, for coming on this first ever Welcome to the Creepzone from the Let's Talk Horror channel. But as usual, same as no, hang on, I haven't even done the facts on number 2 yet.
Oh, gotta throw the facts in.
Told you I'd fuck it up. Here we go. Fact number 1 on Creep 2.
Yet.
Here we go. Fact number 1. Actor Mark Duplass messed up while trimming his beard, resulting in a noticeable patch of bare skin. So an explanation was invented for his character.
That's
That's why.
amazing.
Now I thought it was alopecia because no one can probably see, but under here I have alopecia.
Yep.
So I've got like a patch under here, and I thought, oh, he's like one of me. But it's not. Apparently, he just shaved wrong, so that's unfortunate for me.
But you know that they do pick it out. My husband did that. It's like a nervous thing, and when I watched it,
really,
he was doing it, and I'm like, my husband's name's Greg. I'm like, stop it! And then I watched that, and I'm like, you're just like him, and he's like, what? And he had like a patch missing.
Mine was stress-induced alopecia,
Yeah.
and all my beard and hair stuff, loads of it came out in patches. So I was just like, oh, representing in the movie, but then obviously it's not. He fucked up shaving. So thanks, Mark Duplass. Number 2. Because the script was only an outline, oftentimes Mark Duplass and Desiree Ackhaven would surprise each other with their choices. Very similar to the first. A lot of it was probably whatever they call it. I've forgotten what it's called. Improvised. That's the one.
Yep.
Because I'm that good at improvising, I can't even think of the fucking word. And then number 3, Aaron Joseph, or whatever you want to call him. But I'll call him the Creep, claims to have killed 39 people in total. Yeah, like I said, he does say that, whatever his name is, Joseph, that's the one.
Yep.
He claims to have killed 39 people. Could be a lie, could be more. You'll never know with him because, once again, he's somebody that's going to, for as long as he lives, he's going to, now he's found his mojo again.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to keep doing it, and he's going to keep coming back and doing it. But there we go. So that's some more facts. But there we go. So that's what basically is to expect from this series. Just some fun conversations about films, topics, people of horror.
Yep.
But one of the things, just like the podcast that I want to do, is Jordana, now is your time as well to tell everybody about everything that you do, where to find it. I mean, basically, it's all amazing, but Jordana will tell you.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. So you can find me on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. I do have a YouTube channel. It's not very popular, but you still check it out. Pretty Killer.
Whose is?
Well, I mean, fair to say, but it's fun. It's fun to watch. It's like, come on, just watch our videos. Like, give us a chance.
Watch our videos and have fun with it.
But this is a blast, and I love that we get to document great conversations about great movies like we are. And you can also find me with Featured Creatures DTF with Sam from To Be or Not to Be. And yeah, that's it. I don't really have too much going on. It's the end of the year. Like, going to do the top 10 of 2023, which is extremely hard because it's been a weird year for.
Tell me about it.
Weird year for horror.
So anybody so last year, obviously, I did. Every year, I do the Let's Talk Horror Channel Awards.
Yes,
and I do that. And last year, I did like my first video version of it. Before it's been audio, and then do my video version, and that was really fun because, as we know, 2022 was like the best fucking year.
Yes.
This year has been mostly shit.
Thank you. I'm glad that you said that because no one else will say it. Everyone's like, "Oh, it's not that bad." It's been shit. We've had nothing.
Basically, on my reviews, it's mental because I've been doing so many reviews recently, and only one of them has been about a film that I liked. The rest have all been films that I thought were rubbish.
Yeah,
I'm still going to review them because it's all about being honest, and also my opinion doesn't mean anything. It's just how I feel about it. But yeah, so I think this film has sucked so much for me this year, that I may have to change it to be something that basically I found a very interesting common occurrence of what my top 3 films of the year are so far, and how they are all themed around the same thing, which gives a little bit of a clue to what they may be.
Yes.
And how I might have a deep conversation about which ones and why, and give a reason as to why which one is my favourite, and give them a top 3 out of those. Because trying to do a top 10, trying to do a top 5, it will be so difficult because I'm going to end up putting in films that I thought were all right. Exactly. And I don't want to do that. So I feel like if we get to the end of this year and nothing else surprises me and nothing else is like, okay, that's amazing, that's worth putting in there, then I may have to change the Let's Talk Horror Channel Awards to I'm going to talk about the best 3 films of the year and tell you why.
if it has to happen, it has to happen, because I'm glad that you're not going to bullshit it. And we have to somewhat remain hopeful, because I keep seeing a lot of buzz around Thanksgiving, which I had kind of like
Yeah.
no doubt that it was going to be epic, because we've been waiting how long for this movie. It's Eli Roth. I think it's going to be good. I'm going. Are you going to go see it?
Well, as I said the other day, I put a tweet out, or an X. What do you want? A Twix. We call it a Twix.
Yes.
I put a Twix out saying it's the first time I've probably ever wanted to watch an Eli Roth movie, because I can't stand Eli Roth movies.
Oh.
But this one makes me want to watch it, because it feels like everything has been so shit recently that it's not, that sometimes you just want to go back to like an old school basic horror where people are basically meeting a demise in some horrible ways.
Yeah.
And Eli Roth has probably come at the right time to do that. So yeah, I do want to, hopefully I'll get to the cinema to see it. And I never thought I would be like, because I normally am like, I'll stay away from Eli Roth. But I might have to for this one.
Wouldn't it be crazy if like Thanksgiving blew your mind and that was like your number, like found its way to the top?
Being my number one,
Yeah.
Well, this is what happened last year, because obviously Terrifier 2, I never expected to like.
Yeah.
And ended up being my favourite film of 2022. So
Yep.
that's the thing about horror, and that's why we talk about it. That's why we love it. That's why we do things like this about it, because it is the most interesting genre there is.
Yeah.
Out of everything, it's the most difficult to do right and difficult to do well. Like I said, anyone can do it, but it's doing it well. It's making a good one. And it has so many surprises that you never know what to expect, because just like the movies themselves, horror is at its best when it's unpredictable.
Yes.
Unpredictable horror is the best horror, because you don't know what is around the next corner.
Yep.
And that's the best way to look at it when it comes to the films as well. If you get films that are unpredictable and you can't predict what's going to happen, then you know that you're in a good place with the genre.
Absolutely. Like, knock your socks off.
Not so much.
Yeah. I mean, it's just sad. I think that to go from 2022 to where we are now, it's like night and day, and it's just sad. But
yeah.
I'm hoping that maybe 2020, maybe it's like the odd numbers aren't so good in the even years, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Like next year, maybe it'll be an absolutely banging one.
Hopefully.
Fingers crossed.
Yes.
Or we're going to have to wait until we get into the 2030s, maybe. We'll see.
Oh my God. I mean,
we don't want that again.
We don't, but I do think with Terrifier 3 coming out in 2024, it's going to be that one that's going to be divided. I think that's going to be like the big one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, thank you so much again, Jordana, for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And as you've already said, like everyone, make sure you go and check out everything she does at Pretty Killer Podcast, which you can go and listen to on any podcast platform. And also Feature Creatures.
Feature Creatures DTF.
That's it. I always think that I've got it wrong, and I'll get it right every time. But then I think I got it wrong. But that's on YouTube as well. Make sure you go and subscribe. Everything that Jordana does, make sure you go and follow it, like it, subscribe it. Because what I love, and this is why I love speaking to Jordana, why I love having these conversations, is because she is honestly a proper horror fan that lives and breathes it, that loves it, that's so passionate about it, and it always comes out in everything that she does. And that's why I love talking to you about horror, because it's you know, we both love this genre.
Yeah.
We're both, you know, we're both getting on a bit. Sorry, I didn't mean to be rude about it. And we you know, we've spent a long time with this genre and growing up with it.
Yep.
And we're still passionate, if not more passionate about it now, talking about it. And that is so apparent on everything Jordana does as well. So everyone, make sure you bloody go and do it, because if you don't, you're mugging yourself over.
Thank you, BP. That was so nice and sweet. I'm very thankful that horror connected us, because I genuinely love having conversations with you and doing this. So I'm happy that our horror paths crossed.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, what amazing. So there we go. That is the first welcome to the Creepzone episode. If you have enjoyed this, then let me know. Let me know in the comments, or whatever you want to call them, messages. I don't fucking know.
Let him know.
Just put it in there. Let me know if you enjoyed it. If you hated it, well, just,
Whatever.
maybe don't let me know, because I'm not a very good mental state. But maybe don't let me know. But I don't know. Or feedback helps.
Yeah.
But also, please subscribe to the Let's Talk Horror channel, to everything that Jordana does as well, because if you watch these and you like them, then there's going to be plenty more, because I already have on my whiteboard that's right in front of me, because I'm old and I use a whiteboard. I have already a long list of things that I want to talk about on here, on the Creepzone videos. And as well as that, please go and check out the Let's Talk Horror channel podcast. If you never have, then please go and check it out. It's basically this, where we get to have amazing guests like Jordana. Jordana's been on the show before, where we talked about The Void.
Yes.
We talked about that very honestly, very passionately, about how amazing that movie is. And that's what the Let's Talk Horror channel is. It's just me being very, very fortunate, very lucky, by having amazing conversations with other amazing horror fans like everybody else out there. If you're watching this episode, forgotten what it was, but it's an episode of something. If you're watching it, then, and you enjoyed it, then thank you, and join us and be a creep.